Hey guys, I'm back with my April wrap-up part 2. So I just filmed part 1, and like I said before, there were 10 books on the list, and I just thought I'd break them up so it was a little easier to talk to all them and the video wasn't quite so long. So yeah, let's get this going. The 6th book that I finished this month was actually an audiobook, and that was When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. Paul Kalanithi? I probably said that wrong. Please forgive me. But this was written by Paul, he was studying to be a brain surgeon, and he found out that he had lung cancer, and he has since passed. He wrote a couple articles sort of detailing his outlook on the situation and his thoughts and his philosophies on life and death and how that related to his years in surgery, and that sort of brought this book about. I actually follow a blog called Cup of Joe, and it's her brother-in-law was Paul. I had found the article through the blog, and she had mentioned it, and then she mentioned that this book was coming about, and so I had wanted to read it since then. I really like this book. It was not as sad as I was expecting it to be, which was good because this could have been super depressing, obviously. He talks a lot more about his time at the hospital and his education as a doctor and working to become a neurosurgeon, and kind of what that has taught him and his perspective on life and death because of that, and really interesting to listen to, and just really makes you think about all of those things without being dark and twisty, I guess, But he's a great writer, like really, really great writer. So for the writer series, Lucy, his wife, is actually coming to talk, and I'd love to go to that because I just think it'd be fascinating to hear her perspective on it as well. So anyways, moving on, I guess there's nothing more I can say. The next book I finished was Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer, and this is Jon's first-hand account of the events in 1996 when several people on Mount Everest died and were trapped on the mountain after a storm blew through. There were several sort of criticisms that happened at the time for the sort of commercialism of climbing and how the deaths could have been prevented. And there was a lot of criticism after this book came out as to Jon Krakauer's recount of the time. So it was interesting to kind of read this, and I actually listened to this as well in an audiobook as well as like reading with that. And the audiobook, it did not say anywhere on the audiobook that it was abridged. I got this book at a garage sale. It's hardback, so I would sort of assume, but I think this might be like when it was first released, and I'm wondering if he had since changed the book at all, because there was a lot that was left out, sort of people's thoughts or what he thought people were thinking, or a lot of it had to do with the personal sort of descriptions that he gave of people that were on the mountainside with him, or personal histories that he had along with their stories. And so I'm wondering if he found out afterwards, like, if there was more that was sort of controversial about it, and so and he decided to leave that out of the audiobook. That would be interesting to know. I just like Krakauer's writing. I just thought the whole thing was really fascinating, and it's definitely a tragedy of what happened up there, because hindsight is always 20/20, but when you look back, there's so many ways they could have avoided it. But like I said, hindsight is always going to be 20/20, and you're always going to say, like, why didn't you stop on time? Why didn't you turn around in time? Like, why didn't you take other precautions? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? underestimating that anyone survived this. And I just think climbing mountains is just a crazy thing to begin with. Whoever decided, like, hey, I'm going to climb that thing. I'm going to get up there. That looks like a great idea. The mindset of someone who decides to climb a mountain like Everest is just fascinating to be in. And so that's what I found about this book being so interesting. It wasn't my favorite, so there's that. I don't know if he was just afraid of, like, more criticism or whatever, but it was interesting. It was definitely an interesting read. The next book I finished was Hunger Makes Me a Modern Girl by Carrie Brownstein. Carrie Brownstein is a guitarist, band member, musician of Sleater-Kinney. She also is in Portlandia. It's only 200 pages. It did take me longer than I thought to read it, but I think I was just having a slow reading month anyways last month because I read several, like, 200-page books, and they all took me, like, a couple weeks to finish. So yeah, this was like an account of sort of Brownstein growing up in the Washington State area and her musical influences when she was younger and starting Sleater-Kinney and her relationship with Corinne and her other bandmates and kind of growing and then up to their breakup in 2005 and then, yeah, on since then. But it was just really interesting to hear about her childhood with her parents, and sort of what drove her to music and what she loved about music and what kept her sort of going back and craving that and sort of wanting that, even with everything that came with that, even with everything that was sort of not so great about being in the band. And so I just found this a good read, a wonderful read, really. The next book I finished was Just One Day by Gayle Forman. I really, really like this book, guys. So this is about a girl, Allison, who is taking a, like, post-high school graduation trip to Europe with her friend. She sort of goes off to this offside Shakespeare production in the park and meets this guy, and he offers to take her to Paris or go with her to Paris for one day, and she says yes, which is very much unlike her. Yeah, they fall in love and it's great. And I really like this book. I think I've just been in, like, a European adventure kind of mood. After reading Isla and the Happily Ever After, and then sort of reading about Carrie Brownstein's travels around the world, and all the other books I've been reading lately, it just seemed like a lot of travel books. And I'd love to read more travel adventure books. I'm always up for those. And it was just nice. It was a nice read. It was a nice, like, vacation. Who doesn't want to, like, be swept up by some cute guy in Paris in a day? Who doesn't want that to be, like, you know, their life? Like, we're all cynical. Like, we'd all be like, oh no, like, you guys aren't falling in love, you're just being silly, get over it. But sometimes you just want it to, like, actually work out. And I just liked how throughout this book Allison sort of finds herself, you know, after her and Willem split. After this one day, they get separated in Europe, and she sort of comes home and has to face that. She grows so much, and she becomes this person. She gets out of herself, and I liked reading that sort of growth that she went through, and the sort of self-confidence that she gained, and the sort of, like, adventurous spirit that she came, and confident woman. And I loved the Shakespeare aspects that were in here. I immediately went out and started reading Twelfth Night, which was great. I haven't read Shakespeare in a really long time, and I actually understood it, which was crazy. And I'm sure this book helped a ton. It was just a fun book. A fun read for me. And last but not least is The Dumb House by John Burnside. And this book is crazy. Crazy, all sorts of crazy. Yeah. Like, legit. I just, there's so many things in this book that I was like, what is happening right now? Like, couldn't put it down though. It was like watching a really bad, I don't even know how to describe it. They were such he was such a terrible human, but it was so interesting to read. Being a psychology major, there were so many things that were touched on in here that I had like studied or had, talked about with classmates and taken an interest to and had discussed at length in classes. And yeah, but you think about how many psychologists in history did some sort of experiment on their kids. Not to this level, clearly, not to this level, but if you want to just like read something that's super crazy in all aspects of just like a totally crazy read this. Yeah, if you're looking for like a, psychological, I wouldn't call it a psychological thriller, I just call it a psychological mind. Yeah, there you go. 5 out of 5 stars though, really. I mean, it was a good book. It was an interesting read. Brains, man. Brains. Alright, that's that. I think I'm finally done. As always, my links will be below where you can find me elsewhere. And let me know if you've read any of these, what your thoughts are, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye, guys.